Hello and welcome to Going Beyond Compassion Fatigue. I am Julie Squires, and it is really great to be with you, dog trainers. So, this is a thrill for me. This really is an absolute thrill to deliver this training to you that I adapted for a little bit of what I believe are some of your specific and unique challenges. And first and foremost, I want to thank the amazing Julie Nesmith for having me on here and offering this to you all. So I'll tell you a little bit about me just as we get going, just so you have an appreciation for where it is that I came from and why it is that I'm qualified to talk about this topic. So my background really is in veterinary medicine. I have worked in that field for over 25 years as a vet tech, as a hospital administrator, many years working in different sales roles as far as like working for pharma companies and diagnostic companies and things of that nature. And it wasn't until about 7 or 8 years ago that I really got interested in the field of compassion fatigue and how it impacts not only veterinary medicine, but anyone who works with animals. So we're going to talk about that for sure today. But the other thing I do want to mention is that when I was a vet tech a long time ago, I actually got to work on the clinical trials of a drug called Clomicon, which you may be familiar with, clomipramine, and that is a drug that I think it was probably the first of its kind that was ever marketed specifically for separation anxiety in dogs. And I had a very unique role in the clinical trials. My job was to get histories. My job was to follow up. Again, it was a double blinded study. So we didn't know who was getting drug and who was getting placebo. So I would follow up at regular intervals and check in with the dog owners to find out, how their dogs were doing. We coupled drug with behavior modification, and it was just an amazing experience. But it was also really heartbreaking on one side, right? Because again, and I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but I really got a behind the scenes look at what it's like to have a dog with separation anxiety. And again, from one extreme to the other, right? Some who were just like shredding their environment to others that might maybe just defecated when they're, or urinated when they're owners left. So really we saw the gamut. But I got to see the toll that it takes on the families. I got to see how much struggle it caused for the pet owner as well, and how sometimes there would be conflict within the family because again, one pet owner, usually the one that we were working with, was really dedicated and wanted to do anything they could and try to make this problem go away, and then they maybe their spouse may not have felt the same way. So I mention that just because that's a little bit of the insight that I have into sort of some of the challenges and struggles that you have, which I know are different than that, but I know that that factors in. So I am also an unapologetic pug owner. There happens to be two pugs in the room with me. You can't see them. Look at Ernie. He's walking around, and Mabel. So Ernie, he's the pug in the wheelchair, and yes, he has a disease called pug myelopathy that renders him basically his back end to be non-functioning. So he uses a wheelchair, and he has had this condition, my goodness, probably for about 5 years now. And thankfully, we are able to maintain him very well. And I know that those of us that dedicate our lives to animals, we go above and beyond whenever we can, right? So I know that I'm not doing anything that the vast majority of you wouldn't do for your own dog, but I just want to let you know that you're in good company here. You are in good company. I am one of you. We are in our own tribe here as far as animal lovers. So let's start at the beginning. Let's start with this quote right here. Dr. Rachel Remen said this. She said that the expectation that we can be immersed in suffering and loss daily and not be touched by it is as unrealistic as expecting to walk through water without getting wet. So, this quote really what it's doing is it's normalizing the fact that, yes, of course, you're impacted by what you witness each and every day. And suffering and loss are relative terms, right? Suffering is a relative term. Again, I work with all sorts of aspects of animal work. So sometimes suffering is due to a disease. Sometimes suffering is because of an injury. In your case, sometimes suffering is due to a behavioral problem. And the suffering, yes, it could be with the dog, but you're also bearing witness to the suffering of the people. And loss, again, loss, well, there's loss of a lot of things in your work. Sometimes the loss is euthanasia, but sometimes it's the loss of people's freedom and the loss of them having the relationship that they want with their dog because, again, they're not able to have that because of whatever issues are going on, however, separation anxiety is showing itself. So, what I want to do with this quote is really normalize compassion fatigue. I want you to understand that it's a normal part of working in a profession where you are trying to help others. So, obviously, if we're trying to help others, there's a reason we're trying to help. So, there's a problem there. And yes, when we are constantly being exposed to what that problem is, that is going to have an impact on us. And that's normal. That is normal. One of the things that I think is really important to tease out in this conversation is that compassion fatigue isn't a mental illness, but I do want to talk about mental health because at the end of the day, that's what this is all about is how do we create for ourselves mental health? And mental health, we have to be able to understand comprises not only our emotional well-being, our psychological well-being, but also our social well-being. And it also impacts how we deal with stress and stressful situations. And let's be honest, in 2020, I mean, this is a perfect time to be talking about mental health. It's also a perfect time to be talking about compassion fatigue because I think the whole world is experiencing compassion fatigue and they don't even know it because they don't even know what compassion fatigue is. But I want to talk with you today about compassion fatigue. I want to talk with you today about generating for yourself mental health and well being, no matter what is happening around you. That's the key. So, as we look at what is the goal of mental health, well, the goal of mental health truly is resilience. So, we're going to be knocked down. Like a human life, we are going to be knocked down many, 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 many times. Pandemics are going to come. Dog owners are going to give up earlier than we want. We're going to have personal issues and things. We're going to have, illnesses that come our direction. A human life is constantly getting knocked down. Resilience is getting back up, right? So if we get knocked down 100 times, we just need to get up 101 times. And it is understanding that, this is part of it is like, yes, am I creating for myself? So I sort of use this. I have this concept that I kind of came up with in my head. I imagine that I have this invisible mental health bank account. And I'm thinking about it like this. I'm thinking that I'm always either making deposits into my mental health bank account or I'm making withdrawals. So again, today already, I meditated. That's a deposit. I journaled. That's a deposit. I exercised. That's a deposit. I ate a healthy lunch. There's a deposit. I took a walk with my dogs. There's a deposit. And then when I get, an email from somebody who maybe isn't happy with me, or a deadline comes up that I wasn't prepared for, and now I need to, rush to get something done, then I'll be making some withdrawals, right, from that bank account, if you will, because I'm going to need to fall back on, some of my reserves, if you will, when things get stressful. And the idea is that we're always making more deposits than we're making withdrawals. So let that concept just sort of percolate, resonate with you a little bit, and ask yourself, are you making more deposits than withdrawals? And if the answer is no, great awareness. This is stuff we can change, which is partly why we're here today together. All right, let's talk about your professional quality of life. So if you're a visual person like I am, I love to kind of have a visual here, which is what this slide really does. So we're going to first start over here on the right-hand side of the equation. We're going to talk about what is compassion fatigue. Like, what actually is it? So, the way that I define compassion fatigue is that essentially it's this combination of emotional, physical, psychological, and spiritual exhaustion and depletion that we feel when we are repeatedly exposed to others' pain and suffering. Remember what I said, pain and suffering is relative. What is pain and suffering for one person may not be pain and suffering for another. But yes, you are exposed to the pain and suffering of the dogs as well as the owner and all of their family, and sometimes each other's. Yeah, especially if you're networked, right? If you're in a pretty close network, which I know Julie provides. So I'm guessing you're experiencing each other's pain and suffering sometimes about the ones that you couldn't help, and the challenges of you not getting the outcome that you want. So that is compassion fatigue. And again, it's not specific to people who work with animals. It's specific to anyone who is, again, bearing witness to others' pain and suffering. So that could be people, that could be animals, that could even be ecosystems. And there are many contributing factors to compassion fatigue. So it could be, how many clients you have and providing care to them, and being at their beck and call, and the dogs, of course. It could be the nature of your work. It could be working again alongside of other people. Sometimes, if they're struggling with compassion fatigue, again, it can, to a degree, our emotions can sort of become a little bit contagious sometimes, especially the negative ones. Euthanasia, of course, contributes to compassion fatigue. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that. Burnout, of course, contributes to compassion fatigue. I'm going to define it separately because it's a little bit different, but it can contribute to compassion fatigue. And any type of work related trauma, of course, would also contribute to compassion fatigue. So, work related trauma could be being bitten, work related trauma could be being yelled at by a dog owner, work related trauma could be, hearing about or a really awful situation that happened to a dog who is suffering from separation anxiety. Maybe they even, harmed themselves tragically by what happened. That could be work related trauma. Again, the list goes on and on and on about things that could be traumatic for you. And again, trauma also is in the eye of the beholder. What's traumatic for one person may not be traumatic for another. And when we were looking at what are the signs and symptoms of compassion fatigue, well, it's a wide gamut here, right? It's like one person may be experiencing anxiety or sleep problems. Another person may have some physical ailments. Another person may find themselves like just not feeling it, not feeling the love of for the work. Someone else might be experiencing depression. Someone else might be drinking too much and being depressed. Again, it looks different in everybody. But it's important that you take a look at these signs and symptoms and say, am I feeling any of these? Am I experiencing any of these? And, just kind of keeping in mind and having some awareness over your situation, your current situation, because we can't ever change anything that first and foremost we don't even acknowledge or we're not aware of. So this is important. And I'm going to guess that most of you are self-employed, but and whether you're self-employed, because I'm self-employed too, right? Whether you're self-employed or you work for an organization, compassion fatigue, of course, also has an impact on that. It has an impact on how we deal with our clients, how we deal with the dogs, how we deal, what our messaging is, how much patience we have for our clients. Our reputation, again, can sometimes be at risk. We might find ourselves, again, being very cynical or very negative or blaming dog owners for the problems. And again, that's not going to help us to be able to make an impact. And again, of course, it doesn't feel good either. So there's that. Now, I know from asking, this question about what causes stress, I know that it sometimes is about feeling like a failure when, the dog doesn't recover and you feel as though you're responsible for the outcome. What also may be causing you stress is sometimes there's a disconnect between, the dog's veterinarian, what they want to do, and what you're recommending. Or there may be situations where, people have used other types of modifications, again, behavioral modifications that you don't agree with. There may be difficult family tensions that are factoring in, and, all of that. You, again, may sometimes feel like there's a lot of pressure on you to motivate an owner to keep going with treatment and not give up so quickly. So there can be a lot, and I'm sure I'm just like brushing the surface. I'm not even getting all of it, but as I understand a little bit about your work and the things that are causing you stress, those are the things that bubbled up again to the surface. Now, I mentioned that I was going to define burnout for you separately. So, as you can see, burnout contributes to compassion fatigue, but it's a little bit different. Burnout is we usually call it a workplace specific issue, but really the dynamic that creates burnout is when there's too much of one thing and not enough of something else. Too many clients calling you, only so much time. Too much and too little, right? That will create burnout. Too many appointments, again, not enough time, not enough people to do all of those. Too much and too little, that creates the dynamic of burnout. There's no trauma component. So you could be burned out if you work at the grocery store and you can't keep up with stocking the shelves, right? Like there's too many customers and you don't have enough time or woman power or manpower to be able to stock the shelves. That would also create burnout. But yeah, it contributes to compassion fatigue, and you can be burned out and also be experiencing compassion fatigue simultaneously. So keep that in mind and know which is different. With burnout, believe it or not, like burnout is corrective when you take a long weekend or have a little bit of a vacation. But with compassion fatigue, a vacation doesn't help because you haven't yet figured out how to correct the imbalance that's being caused by, again, how you're being affected by all of that. One other term that I really want to talk with you about, because this also, and I've mentioned some of the situations here, is something called moral stress. So moral stress is sort of just like what it sounds like. It's when things conflict with your own morals and beliefs, right? So that may be what the veterinarian recommended, another trainer's methods, what the client decides to do. When those things conflict with you, then of course that's what we call moral stress. And there isn't anyone who works with animals that doesn't deal with moral stress. In all of the animal niches that I work with, every single one of them deals with moral stress. It looks a little bit different, but they all deal with it. And there's no easy solution here. The solution, believe it or not, is about you and your well-being. The solution is for you to take exceptionally good care of yourself so that you can weather these situations. Because again, we can't control what other people do. We can't control what the veterinarian recommends. We can't control what the other trainer recommended. But what we can control is, again, how we deal with those situations. That is on us. So the more whole we are, the better we're taking care of ourselves, the more reserves we have, the more deposits we've been putting in our mental health bank account, the easier we will be able to navigate these morally stressful situations. But I wanted to give it a name because I think it's important when we give things names. When we give things names, it normalizes it. When we give things names, it makes us all realize, oh, okay, this is what I've been experiencing. I didn't know it had a name. Now I know that, I'm normal, that's why this bothers me. So, all right, keep that in mind. Now, so we talked about everything over here on the right-hand side. And secondary trauma really is just another word for compassion fatigue. Again, both of those things feeding in to compassion fatigue. Now, I want to bring your eye to the other side of this equation. So look there's a whole other side here, the left-hand side. Notice this, compassion satisfaction. Notice how this is an equal and opposite force. So compassion fatigue is the negative aspects of the work. Compassion satisfaction, is the positive aspects of the work. It's the pleasure you derive from this. It's the reason you keep doing it. It's the reason why you love it. It's the reason you come back every day, right? And it can be an antidote to compassion fatigue if we are staying connected to it. If we are remembering each and every day to look for the good things, if we are dwelling in them, when we get a report, an email, a text message from a client, when we sort of just let that sink in for a moment before we rush off to the next thing. We human beings are very crafty at just rushing off to the next thing. We get some good news. We don't spend any time sort of letting it seep into our bones. And you have to let some of this seep into your bones in order to offset compassion fatigue. So, in thinking about what it is that you love about your work, I think it's really important to get deliberate about that. I think it's really important to make a list of the top 5 or 10 things that you really love about your work. And I know from talking with many of you that the things you really love about your work is, of course, seeing dogs get better. I know that you love when you see the dog get it, or when you see the owner get it, or when you are able to, again, make a pet be a family member again, a healthy family member again, a relaxed family member again. Right? I know that that's so much about what you love. Get deliberate about making sure you understand what you love. And like I said, make a list, post it somewhere in your office. So you have always those top 5 or 10 things that you love about your work. Don't leave it to chance. You have a human brain. Your human brain is always looking for the negative. You have to be consciously looking for the positives. We're going to talk a little bit more about that here in a little bit. Okay, let's talk about, so that was the first part was about, like, what is compassion fatigue? What does it look like? What are the signs and symptoms? All of that. Now I want to talk with you about what I call cultivating resilience. Cultivating resilience. So what is resilience? It is how we adapt to any sort of adversity, challenge, obstacle, struggle. And it involves, yes, it involves bouncing back. And sometimes we bounce back to right where we were, but sometimes we bounce back and we are actually better and stronger than we were before the thing came and knocked us over. So yeah, like, is it possible to bounce back in 2020 so that the version of us in 2021 is better than the version in 2020? Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely, that's possible. And there's actually a name for it. It's called post-traumatic growth, right? And what that means is that, again, we function at a higher level than we did before the thing came and wiped us out. So I want to talk with you about resilient people. What we know is that there are 5 characteristics of resilient people. Number 1, they own their sense of control, which means that they know that they cannot control other people, that the only thing they can ever control is themselves. And I'll be honest with you, as soon as you learn that lesson, you will decrease a lot of your stress, because I see so many people creating so much stress for themselves because they want other people to be different than they are. They want to change other people. And that's a losing battle. That is a losing battle. The second trait of resilient people is that they have pretty amazing problem solving skills. They recognize a problem, but then they're like, oh, okay, well, what's going to be the solution? What am I going to need to do to fix this? Non-resilient people get mired down and, oh my gosh, I don't know what we're going to do. The sky is falling. This is terrible. I don't know how we're going to fix this. There's no way to get out of this. That's non-resilient people. The third trait of resilient people is that they have strong social connections. Again, Julie has provided an amazing forum for you to be able to have strong social connections with people who get you, who understand what it's like to be you, who do your type of work. You cannot minimize that. That is really, really, really important to have that type of social support. The fourth thing that identify resilient people is that they identify themselves as survivors no matter what happens. No matter what happens, they constantly see themselves as the survivor, right? Not as the victim. And lastly, and again, I should step back to say that that doesn't mean that, because it's important to be clear that, especially as it relates to trauma and a tragedy, yes, you can be a victim in the moment. Absolutely. The difference is whether or not you stay a victim or whether you transcend to become a survivor. That's the difference with resiliency. And the fifth characteristic is that resilient people are able to ask for help. They're willing to be vulnerable and say, you know what? I could use some support here. They don't have to muscle through and do it all themselves. They're not worried about what other people are going to think about them and think that other people are going to think they're weak if they ask for help. No, just the opposite. They understand that actually it's it causes it's how am I trying to say this? It takes strength to be vulnerable. It's the opposite of what we've been taught our whole lives. I think so many of us have been misguided in vulnerability. We have been taught that it means that we're weak, but we are wrong about that. It's the opposite. Vulnerability takes courage. So asking for help, yes, yes, yes. So, some things that you must know about resiliency. It's not a fixed trait. It's actually something that can be learned and developed. Yeah. And again, it certainly is generated by our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions, which I'm going to talk with you a little bit about the connection between those three things. And it's not exceptional. It's actually quite ordinary. Like we are meant to be resilient. As a species, we are hardwired to survive. We are hardwired for resilience to, again, bounce back, to take the blows and then get back up and dust ourselves off. We really like that is what we are designed to do as human beings. And we're not the only ones. You don't have to look very far in nature to see that as well. Think about animals. They are, again, highly resilient as well. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But yeah, look around, even at nature, how resilient nature is. So I want to share with you the 5 things that work in order to cultivate resiliency. So number 1, by and large, is physical activity. You cannot deny there is a plethora of research behind the importance of physical activity to make us more resilient. And here's why. What we know from the science is that physical activity actually promotes new cells to grow in our brain, specifically nerve cells. And because of this, we're actually able to create plasticity of the brain stress center, which is the hippocampus. So plasticity means that we're able to actually grow new pathways there. And therefore, the way our brain is wired to often be, fight or flight, we're actually, through physical activity, we're able to sort of tap down our own brain's stress center so that we don't just go into fight or flight all the time. And physical activity is also giving a signal to our physiology that the world is a safe place, right? That the world isn't a dangerous place. And again, physical activity could be as little as 20 minutes a day. Right? You don't have to overthink this. And again, don't confuse physical activity with the fact that your work might be physical. This I'm talking about here, and the research shows that this has to be physical activity for physical activity's sake, whether that's yoga, running, walking, cycling, elliptical, spinning, something like that. It's like this has to be just for the sake of nothing else but physical activity. And yeah, you get bonus points if you do something out in nature. And yeah, then who knows, you could take your dogs with you. That could be super fun because I know so many of you get stressed out because you feel like you're taking care of everybody else's dogs and your own dogs get slighted sometimes. So yeah, here's a way to actually, do 2 things at once. I'm all in for that. I am all in for that. All right, number 2, what works is what I call thinking consciously. What does thinking consciously means? Well, first and foremost, I want to teach you a little bit about your brain. So we all have like 2 parts of our brain. The first brain that developed as we developed as human beings is what we call the primitive brain or the reptilian brain or the lower brain. And that is where the seat of the brain's stress center is, the amygdala, the hippocampus. That is the part of your brain that sees the world in very binary terms. That's the part of your brain that looks for safe or danger, good or bad, black or white. It sees nothing in between. It sees the world again in opposites. So it's looking at everything and it's making a very quick decision, danger or safe, right? And again, our habits are relegated here. So your brain is the organ that takes the most energy in your entire body. Anything your brain can put on automatic, it will. Anything your brain can create a habit for, it will. And it will, again, relegate those things to the lower brain. So they're unconscious. So, and even a lot of our thinking comes from here. We have about 60 thoughts per day. Most are negative, most are repeats. Most of us are not aware of what we're thinking. This becomes a problem because your thoughts create your life. Yes, your thoughts create your life. Until you get conscious about what you're thinking, you'll never be able to create a conscious life for yourself. And why does this matter? Because it's not the things outside of you. It's not euthanasia. It's not the virus. It's not the stock market. It's not what a client decides to do with their dog that ever creates your feelings. Your feelings don't come from circumstances. Your feelings don't come from things outside of you. Your emotions come from your thoughts. So things happen around you. Then you have a thought about those things. So in other words, let's say you get a message from a client. The client says, we've decided to euthanize Sparky. He's not getting any better. Thank you for your help. That doesn't cause your feeling of inadequacy. That doesn't cause your feeling of guilt or regret or anything. Your thought about that will cause how you feel. So if your thought about that is, you know what, I get it, they tried really hard, that thought will create a feeling of understanding. If instead your thought is, oh my gosh, if I was getting so close, we were almost there, that thought will create a feeling of regret. If your thought is, oh, people, I'm so sick and tired of people not being willing to be patient with this process, that thought is going to create anger. It's your thoughts that create your feelings, and your feelings then fuel how you behave or your actions, and then your results. So your thoughts are creating everything. You don't get to choose what happens around you, but you do get to choose your thoughts. This is what I mean about thinking consciously. But you have to turn on this dial, if you will, because again, your brain is on automatic. You have to become deliberate about choosing what you want to think about one of your clients' emails or what they say to you or what they do. You have to, again, choose and be deliberate what to think. Your thoughts are changeable. Your thoughts are optional. Your thoughts are a choice. But yeah, we need to be deliberate about what we think from situation to situation to situation. And that literally is, again, using your brain not from the lower, the red area, or even the blue emotional state, but putting the power up here in the green, in the executive state, to be able to be looking at situations that are happening around you and thinking, how could I think about this? What could I learn from this? How else might I think about what's happening around here? That's what it means to think consciously. And that's a lot of what I teach people to do as a coach, and using some processes to actually teach people how to do that. But it is a huge skill for mental health, no question about it. And I love this quote here. If you're not familiar with Viktor Frankl, he was a Holocaust survivor, a psychiatrist, a neurologist, and he wrote an amazing book called Man's Search for Meaning. And this quote right here, between stimulus and response, there is a space. So he's saying between something that happens and how you respond or your thoughts about it, there's a space. And in that space is your power to choose your response, to choose your thought, in other words. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. Again, what you think causes how you feel. So if you don't like the way you feel, what we think we need to do is we need to go and change everybody out there. Like we need to change, we need them to do something different, them to behave differently, them to say different things. We think that's what needs to happen so we can feel better. It's not. What we need to change in order to feel better is what we're choosing to think about what they said or what they did or that thing that's happening out there. That's where your power lies, is in your thinking. So that's what it means to think consciously. It's an unbelievable skill. All right, number 3, what works is mental hygiene. This really goes along with number 2 because first of all, wait a minute. Many of you might be thinking, I don't even know what I'm thinking. How can I change my thoughts when I don't even know what I'm thinking? And I'm like, yeah, exactly. How can you change your thoughts if you don't know what you're thinking? You have to become aware of what you're thinking. How do you do that? Well, the number one way to do that is through journaling. No question about it. The benefits of journaling, again, you can look over here on the slide. Look at the benefits. These are all scientifically proven benefits to journaling. Look at that. I mean, decreasing some symptoms of certain health conditions, improving your cognitive functioning, increasing your immune system, counteracting the negative effects of stress, fewer stress related doctor visits, better mood, decrease in depression and anxiety, greater psychological wellness, fewer symptoms of avoidance, even reduce PTSD symptoms. So it's a highly effective tool for managing your stress, processing emotions, and becoming aware of what you're thinking, because that's mostly what you'll be writing in journaling is your thoughts. And I have created a little worksheet for those of you that need a little help with journaling. I have created a worksheet that at the end I will tell you how you can get. Personally, here's how I journal. Where is my journal? So, I just go out to Target. I buy a cute little, or Staples or something. I buy a cute little journal, maybe has a cute little saying on there. Doesn't have to. You could just use a regular notebook. And every single day, I spend like 5 or 10 minutes in the morning. I just dump my brain out. Well, like all just the little piddly stuff that's in there, I just get it out on paper. And because I've been doing it for so long, like I don't need to spend hours journaling. And not that there's anything wrong with that. There are times, though, when I'm dealing with something that I do have to spend more time on it. And then what you're left with, you go back through and you can go back through and you can circle facts, right? You'll find there's not going to be many facts. Mostly it will be thoughts. You'll get an appreciation of what you're thinking. Then you can start asking yourself, wait a minute, is that a thought that's working for me? Right? Like many of you, may have what we call imposter syndrome, right? It's like all imposter syndrome is a litany of thoughts that create self-doubt. Oh, I'm a fraud. I don't know what I'm doing. Someone's going to figure me out. I shouldn't be doing this. Who am I to think that I can help dogs? That's just all unmanaged thinking. That's all that is. And we think that our thoughts are true, but guess what? Your thoughts aren't facts. Facts are facts, thoughts are thoughts. Big difference. So, yeah, what I love to do it in the morning. I think the way we start our day sets us up for our day. If that doesn't work for you and you need to do it at night, then do what works for you. 5 or 10 minutes is plenty. Again, there's some prompts right here. You could just start with I'm thinking and just start writing. I'm worried about, just start writing. I'm feeling da da da. Like I mentioned, I did put together a worksheet for you. So I will tell you how to get that at the end here, and that might also help you. But again, it's sort of like, think about it like your house. Journaling is synonymous to cleaning your house a little bit every day. So, it's like cleaning your brain out a little bit every day. That's why I call it mental hygiene, because I think we need to keep our brain clean. Otherwise, it becomes a distorted mess in there and we don't know what's going on. So think about your journaling practice like tidying up a little bit so that you don't have to then sacrifice an entire day on your day off by cleaning your whole house. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to do that. All right, that was number 3. Let's talk about number 4. Oh, number 4 is self-care. Yeah, let's talk about self-care. All right, there are 5 aspects to self-care. There is the mental, there is the physical, there's the spiritual, the emotional, and the social. And I'm going to break them apart for you. And don't freak out on me here. This isn't about 5 more things you have to do every day. I just want to kind of widen your understanding of what self-care is. And you may find that you're doing more self-care than you thought, or you may find, oh, there's some areas of self-care that maybe you're lacking in and you were sort of feeling that longing, but didn't really know why. So let's start with mental self-care. Mental self-care is really this balance between stimulating our mind, learning new things, but also giving our brain a break. So it might be listening to a podcast or listening to music or watching Netflix or watching a movie, right? It could be a whole bunch of those different things. Physical self-care relates to our health, our nutrition, our physical wellness. So it could be things like, of course, eating right and hydrating ourselves with water, which, oh, let me practice self-care right now. Watch this. Yeah, that's how long it can take sometimes. But physical self-care could also be going to the doctor, taking your medications, taking your vitamins, putting on daily body lotion, washing your face at night. Like that would be physical self-care. We sort of have bought in that self-care is about consumerism, and it doesn't have to be. We don't have to buy anything. Like sometimes maybe we might buy something, but don't get confused to think that self-care has to come from Amazon or you have to go online to get it or you have to go to a spa, because I think that just makes it that much farther out of reach. Spiritual self-care. This is basically the part of self-care where we are aligning with what we believe to be our purpose. And this may be religious if you're religious, or it may not. If you're not religious, you get to decide. For some people, spiritual self-care is yoga or prayer or volunteering or meditation or going to church or being in nature, right? You get to decide. You get to decide. Social self-care. Oh, this is a hard one right now, connecting with others in a positive way. So yeah, we're having to really think outside the box and be creative right now during a pandemic of, yeah, how do we practice social self-care while keeping ourselves safe? And yeah, we may use, virtual means to do that. Or if you live in a warm climate right now, it's winter here, so we're not doing a lot of stuff outside, getting together outside. But if you live in a warmer climate and you're able to do that, then rock on. That's amazing. And lastly is emotional self-care. Emotional self-care is about acknowledging and understanding our feelings. And I will tell you this, most of us have not been taught how to feel our feelings or process our feelings. It is a skill that we need to learn. And it's something we all need to learn. And I can tell you that what it isn't is ignoring, distracting, or trying to change our feelings. It's not reacting to our feelings. Feeling our feelings looks a lot more like sitting down quietly, closing our eyes maybe, and experiencing what we're experiencing on the physical, because that's where our emotions are, on the physical. We feel them in our body. And journaling can be hugely helpful here as well for emotional self-care. But yeah, this is a big piece of self-care, is the emotional aspect. So let's see, what else haven't I mentioned here? Sleep, shopping, and food prep. I think that that's really important too. That's basically, it's like, think about the way you treat your pets. Like, I mean, would you ever run out of dog food or cat food? I mean, highly unlikely, right? It's like somehow you have a mental tally in the back of your mind about how much you have left and when you need to do that. But how often do you run out of food for yourself? And it's like you open the refrigerator and like, oh, there's like nothing in there. So food prepping, again, so that you have stuff if you have, long work days. And like that would be self-care, knowing that you come home and there's something already made. You just need to pop it in the oven or put it on the stove to warm it up. That's self-care. Fueling your body with, good quality food most of the time, hydrating, moving your body, having a routine, creating some rest and solitude where you're not, answering emails or text messages, you're away from the electronics and you're just being present with yourself for a little bit. Managing your tech. Yeah, a lot of self-care comes down to boundaries. Like, do you have limits in place and boundaries of when your clients can contact you, when you're available and when you're not? That's really important. That is self-care. Journaling, meditation, mindfulness, of course, all of those. Taking breaks and not overscheduling yourself, and catching yourself when you do that, and then being like, okay, you know what? Because I do believe that we have to go too far in order to figure out what is too far. Then we can kind of come back and go, okay, now I know that that's too many clients to handle in a week. Oh, there's a typo there for overscheduling. Sorry about that. Missed the L. Like, so figure out what is your happy place in that, like how many per week or how many per day. Figure that out for yourself, right? Make the mistake, and I don't even call it a mistake. Like I said, sometimes we have to go too far to know what our limit is. That's okay. That's okay. The important thing is, oh, am I cognizant of, like, okay, now I know to never go to having that many clients per day. Bringing food and snacks with you, again, so you're keeping yourself nourished, staying hydrated, wearing PPE, of course, comfortable clothes and shoes. That's self-care. Limits and boundaries. Yes, that is self-care. We can get kind of down the rabbit hole, if you will, of being afraid that, of not being everything to everybody. But we are going to pay a very steep price at that. So you do have to have limits, and you do have to set expectations for your clients of them knowing and being crystal clear of, here are the times I check email, here are when I do callbacks, here are the times you can call me, when I pick up messages, whatever it might be. Just being crystal clear about that. Asking for help for things, right? Maybe you have too many clients and you want to ask another trainer to take some of yours, or asking for help getting someone to do paperwork for you, or, some of the admin stuff. Yeah, that would be self-care. Putting your phone on do not disturb. Yes, that could be self-care when you don't want to be disturbed, right? All of those things would be considered self-care. And nature. I mentioned it once, but I do think that, especially now, I think so many of us are longing for the peace that nature brings us. So, whether that's being in a park, whether that's just going for a walk with your dogs, whether that's being in the woods or the lake or the ocean, um, you know, like, I think the reason why we love animals so much is because they're part of nature. We're part of nature. So let's again take every opportunity we can to connect to the natural world, especially now. Especially now. I think our nervous systems are so fried from all of the technology and having to be, on all of the time, that we really need a true reset. And I think one of the best ways to get that reset is to regularly engage in the natural world. Okay, so lastly, number 5 is this: aligning with your why. I absolutely love this quote from Mark Twain. He said, "The two most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why." So, when I'm talking about your why, I'm talking about your purpose. So, let me explain what I mean by your purpose. Because I think some of us get a little bit sidetracked here. We think that, we're like, I don't know what my purpose is. Like, I haven't figured it out yet. Like, no one's told me. Yeah, no one's going to tell you your purpose. Like, there isn't going to be an email or a text message from the universe someday that announces to you what your purpose is or what your why is. You just have to claim it for yourself. You just have to decide what it is that you're here to do. That's your purpose. Now, we get it confused. We get it confused with our job title. And I want you to know that partly the reason why we must be talking about your why or your purpose is that, to a large degree, when you're connected to it, almost like we talked about compassion satisfaction early on. That's the pleasure you derive from your work, the good parts, and letting yourself bask in the goodness of your work. When you get the good reports, when you do hear about good outcomes, when somebody sends you a nice email or a message, basking in that again is an antidote to compassion fatigue. Well, so is staying aligned with your purpose, your why, what you believe it to be. And what you need to know is, it's not your job title. That's not your purpose. Your purpose isn't what it says on your business card. Your purpose isn't, I'm going to guess, also what it says on your website. Your purpose isn't what you do. Be very clear. Your purpose is who you get to be while you do it. That's what makes you extremely unique, each and every one of you. Your purpose is different. You can be in a room full of dog trainers, but each and every one of your purposes is different, because who you get to be while you help people with their dogs as it relates to separation anxiety is completely different from one another. That's your purpose. So I'll give you an example of this. I have a friend, his name is Chucky. And he works for a company here in the United States called Waste Management. Essentially, they are a waste removal. They collect trash. So he's worked for them for, oh my gosh, like 30 plus years. So yeah, like his title, is, I don't know, trash collector or something like that. But that's not his purpose. His purpose is who he gets to be while he's on his route. His purpose is the fact that he knows everybody on his route. He knows where the old people live. So because he knows where the old people live, he pushes their their garbage can down their driveway and puts it next to their stair so they have easy access to it. Or if he notices one day that they forgot, he runs down and grabs it and wheels it up and takes care of it. His purpose is bringing somebody a cup of coffee. His purpose is telling somebody a joke that he sees on his route. His purpose is, delivering them the latest sports score. During the summer, if it's during Yankee season, you better believe it's going to be the Yankees. That's his purpose. It's who he gets to be while he's collecting their trash. So do you see? That makes him very, very unique. Your purpose is unique to you. So who do you get to be? Oh, well, you get to be somebody who shows up with a positive attitude. You get to be somebody who's inspiring. You get to be a part of changing lives and families. That is no small feat, my friend. You get to help keep dogs and people together longer. You get to anticipate the needs of others. You get to educate and teach and support your clients and do the same for the dogs. You get to be an example of what's possible. And for so many of you, you may have dealt with separation anxiety in your own pets. So you get to be an example of that. You get to lead with love and compassion, dedication and commitment to your work, to your clients, and to their dogs. And you get to work harder than everyone else. Why? Because that's who you are. That's who you get to be. Isn't that exciting? So I have a homework assignment for you. I want you to fill in this equation, this sentence right here, this formula, if you will, to figure out your why. And I want you to post it somewhere. Actually, I want you to post it in a lot of different places. So this comes from Simon Sinek in his book, What's Your Why? So here's, as you can see, here's the sentence: to blank so that blank. I'm going to share with you what my purpose is. My purpose is to empower animal workers so that they can change lives for animals and people and love their own while they do it. That's my purpose. My purpose isn't to be a compassion fatigue specialist. My purpose isn't to be a life coach. Plenty of people are those things. My purpose is this: to empower you all so that you can change the lives of people and animals and love your own while you do it. That's my purpose. So again, this is your homework. Fill this out. All right, let's bring this to a close. Excuse me. Here are some reminders about resilience. It requires doing something. This isn't passive. It requires action on your part. It requires, again, doing something, whether that doing something is thinking consciously, journaling, physical activity, self-care, or again, staying connected with and reminding yourself of your why. And what is resilient may not always be pleasurable in the moment. Yeah, at 6 o'clock in the morning when it's dark, do I want to wake up so that I can do my meditation and journaling? Well, not always, but again, so it would be more pleasurable to stay in bed, but I know that won't make me more resilient. So yes, it requires me to get up and do it. And it's a discipline. It's a proactive behavior that again is supporting your mind, your body, and your spirit. Don't leave this to chance. This can't be left to chance. This has to be something that is deliberate, that you're choosing to do in each and every moment, that you are making yourself a priority so that you can take care of those that you want to help. You can't do it any other way. If you're last on your list, you won't be able to be sustainable. I can say that with the utmost of certainty. You have to become first on your list. And that's not always easy for a lot of people. It takes a lot of courage to practice self-care. It takes a lot of courage to practice all of these things that I'm talking about. It's much easier to put yourself at the bottom of the list and say, oh, well, if I have some time for myself, it's more important that I take care of everyone else. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. It's important that you take care of yourself first so you have something to give. And each and every one of you has been given quite an amazing gift to do the work that you do. Trust me when I tell you that, even when you doubt yourself sometimes, guess what? Doubt is part of the human condition. It's okay. But in order to truly serve at the highest level, you have to take amazingly good care of yourself first. So here is where you can get the worksheet about journaling if you want some additional things, if you just don't want to, open the paper and write things down. So rekindlesolutions.com, that's actually my website, but if you put /journal, you'll get this handout. And those are my two cats. I thought we would give a little feline love since we talked an awful lot about canines. So little representing on the feline side. And here's all my contact information. I have a podcast where I teach a lot of, the tools and concepts, some of which I've shared with you today. There's my social media, the places where I am on social media. And also, I do send out biweekly e-inspirations, I call them, where I am reminding people who work with animals about how amazing and special they are and about how to take good care of themselves. So if that's something you want to check out, I would love to have you on my email list. It's also where I announce, new things that I might be doing to, again, serve the mental health and well-being of animal workers. So you can either text the word rekindle, which is the name of my business, Rekindle, to 66866, or you can just go to the website rekindlesolutions.com. And as soon as you go there, there'll be a pop-up box that will come up and you can input your email address there and we can stay connected. So thank you so much. Thank you for watching this recording. And I have so loved, again, supporting you. I admire you and honor the work that you do. I know it is so important. And I'm so grateful that you are on the planet. And I want you to take really good care of yourself. So another shout out to Julie. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity. And hopefully we'll see you again. So take good care. Bye-bye.